So I understand that I'm probably not the guy to be going to for this sort of video, but I figured I might as well give it a try. Firstly, hi, I'm George. By no means am I a photographer, but I do like shooting film a lot, clearly. So shooting film is seen as this weird hipster sort of thing, but it's honestly kind of cool. Maybe you strictly shoot digital photos, whether it's a DSLR or maybe your iPhone or whatever phone you have. Maybe you're just interested to see as to what I have to say on this topic, or maybe you just want to give film a try. Film is known to look vintage or nostalgic, if you will, considering the older lenses and the film itself. Analog photography just looks vintage, or it just looks older, for the most part at least. Somewhat like a dream if you see it how I see it. The whole film process can be a little scary or daunting, to say the least. You have to adjust everything manually, you have to focus manually, and then at the very end you have to develop the role. With so much human error that can take place, all of this costs money, but maybe I can convince you that film isn't that scary or that expensive at that. Firstly, you need a camera. I'd really suggest looking through a relative's place, with their permission of course. Film cameras were the only cameras that existed for decades on end, so finding one really isn't that rare. You can also go to some thrift stores and see if you can look out. If all else fails, you can just go to eBay and source your camera from Japan. Every single one of my cameras that I have, or most of my main cameras, are from Japan anyways, so there's my 2 cents. If you do end up going the eBay route, I really encourage you to only get cameras that have been film tested and considered working, just to make sure that you're getting a working camera. For the sake of simplification, I'm going to be going over 35mm film and 35mm cameras. Cameras come in 3 separate iterations, if you will. There's SLRs, or single lens reflex cameras, rangefinders, and point and shoots. Again, for the sake of this video, I am going to be using my Canon A1 for reference. It's an SLR. Commonly, film cameras are battery powered. Normally they'll use these 6-volt batteries. You can find them on Amazon or eBay or a battery store. They're not that expensive, at least considering that you're only going to be changing out every couple of months or so. Next comes film. There's 3 types of film, I guess. There's color negative film, slide, or color positive film, which I have not used, so I don't have something physical to show you, and black and white film. Film can be a very confusing conversation at the beginning, but at this point you can go on Instagram and find sample images of just about every single roll that exists. As far as film goes, it's really up to you to decide what you want to be shooting and what you want to be experimenting with. Different films do have different color characteristics. There's a reason why there's X amount of variations of film. Along with the respective color characteristics, films do have varying ISOs as well. Use higher ISOs such as Portra 800 or Portra 400, or really any 800 or 400 speed film for low light situations such as indoors or late afternoon. The higher the ISO number, the more sensitive the film is to light, meaning you can shoot in darker situations. Conversely, use low ISO films for really bright situations such as midday light. To be expected, you have to manually set your exposure. You also have to manually focus your photo. Both of these things aren't too complicated, but they do require their own practice, at least depending on your history in photography. As far as the film discussion goes, I do want to recommend 3 separate film stocks, just for the sake of maybe some sort of clarification. Easily the first film that I could always recommend to someone is Superia Extra 400. It's Fujifilm, and you can find it at any Walmart or really any drugstore. It's the first film I ever tried out, so it holds a special place in my heart. Next, I do want to recommend Ilford HP5. It's a 400 ISO black and white film. Maybe you're feeling artsy, maybe you just want to spend less money on film. For the record, black and white film is a whole lot cheaper, hopefully for obvious reasons. And lastly, I also want to recommend Gold 200, which in my opinion is a very slept on film, but I'm not going to be talking about that in this video. I mean, there's obviously a reason why I have so much of this stuff. At this point, I'm assuming you already shot a roll, but for the sake of your own mental well-being and my own, please do not open the film back until you have rewound the film. Most cameras have this little button in the bottom. Click that and you should be able to rewind it. For SLRs, pick this little knob up and start spinning in whatever direction the arrow is facing. For point and shoots, I suggest looking up the manual or any video on YouTube, and you should be able to figure it out. Now you have a roll of film that's ready to be developed. You now have the important decision of deciding how you're going to be developing that roll. You can always find a local film lab. I'm using this one because that's just the closest one I have to me, I think. I live in the middle of nowhere, so sourcing a local film lab just isn't an option for me. It's also important to note that this is where the whole film process starts getting a little expensive, in my opinion, if it isn't expensive enough already. With very small brain math, this one roll is worth about $10.99 right now, plus the actual development process of your roll. I looked around a couple of labs and got an average of $11.99 for both the development and the scanning of the film. Altogether, this roll of 36 photos is going to cost you around $23, not including shipping costs. This also equals 64 cents per shot, which is also one of those other novelties of film. With film, you are limited with the amount of photos that you can shoot per roll, depending how many rolls you're carrying on you. This also means that every single photo you're taking is worth X amount of dollars, which is inherently affecting your wallet. Hopefully with this slower and more methodical process, you can put a little more thought into whatever picture you want to be taking. Besides all of that, this might or might not seem a little expensive depending how you decide to take care of your film. Another way to have your film developed is by having yourself do it yourself. To develop, you just need some equipment, tanks, thermometers, bottles, funnels, and your chemicals, of course. I do personally use Cinestill C41 kit, which is $27.99, not including shipping, but with that amount of money and with this chemical kit, you can develop up to 20 rolls, I think. I've stretched it a little further. I've developed up to 28 rolls with this kit, which means you're developing a whole lot more for obviously less money. If you can't tell, or if you haven't heard me mention this before, I do develop my own film for hopefully obvious reasons. It's just that much cheaper, and I guess it somewhat does lean into the next thing I do want to talk about. Developing your own film and scanning your own film does feel a little more rewarding, considering that I am taking care of pretty much the entire process of whatever photo I took. I focused the photo, I shot the photo, I exposed the photo, I scanned my photo, and well, I developed my photo. So I really can't say that whatever frame is on the screen right now is truly mine, but I'm not trying to sound like some sort of loser. This is all information that's way beyond the scope of this video, but there's so much information on the internet and on YouTube that you can really go anywhere, and you'll probably get the hang of it within an hour or so. As far as scanning goes, you also need something to scan your developed film. I use a scanner. Scanning film is also its own learning curve that you can definitely also find information on all over the internet. There's unfortunately no point in me making those sort of videos because there's way more credible information on YouTube than I could ever make. With this being said, I will be leaving what I think is the best video to hopefully encourage you to start shooting film in 2021. At this point, you've picked your child, you shot your film, you developed your film, and now your bank account is seemingly empty. It's up to you to decide if you do like your photos, and if you don't, welcome to the club. You're most definitely not the only one. Yeah, I'd say bye. Fuck. I'm so fucking tired.